Without her, you're not going anywhere. This is a summary of the book Get Her On Board, Secrets to Sharing the Cruising Dream by Nick O'Kelly. He wrote the book for the man with a cruising dream and a wife or girlfriend who is new to sailing and probably a bit resistant about doing a multiple month cruising trip. By the way, I'm not on a boat right now. I'm planning to be back in November when the cruising season opens again. But instead of showing you land travel, I figured you're probably more interested in sailing content. The story of the author Nick O'Kelly in a nutshell. He had a dream to sail away into crystal clear blue waters and spend his life on white sand beaches on his Peterson 46 sailboat with his wife Megan. His wife didn't quite have the same dream. He tried everything from asking nicely to manipulating. Nothing worked until he gave the ultimatum. "I'm going," he said. "You can join me or not." And guess what? She decided to join. The rest of the book is about why this way of persuading her led to the worst possible trip ever cruising to Mexico, including a gigantic loss on the sail of his boat. And she said, "I will never buy another effing boat again." But, a big but, how a couple years later he persuaded her to buy another boat in a way that she actually enjoyed the lifestyle and out of her own wanted to keep doing it. How did this all happen and what can we learn from this? First, we're going to talk about what sailing is and what sailing isn't. Then, why was this sailing trip an absolute disaster? Then, the difference in men and women. Then, what is this fantasy of yours? What do you really want to get out of it? And what's in it for her? And then, what type of boat would make your wife or girlfriend happy and why? Last, how do you get her to follow you in your dream? If you like to buy the book, there's a link in the description of this video. What sailing is and what sailing isn't. Sailing is lying in a hammock on your boat with a beer or a glass of wine in your hand, watching the sunset in the afternoon, or drinking your morning coffee while watching the sun rise and see the most beautiful sunrises you've ever seen in your life. The truth of cruising is that you spend 90 to 95% on anchor or in a marina, and because boats all tend to go in a similar direction at similar times because of how the wind works. Unlike those people you met on other vacations, everyone ends up with long-lasting friendships. Sometimes there will be a whole bunch of dolphins swimming around the boat. Unlike in modern land life, where people often are very busy with chasing things like a bigger house, a bigger car, and where there is limited time for each other and for hobbies, in the cruising lifestyle it is the opposite. There's almost unlimited time to spend on your relationship and your hobbies. Cruising is a life-changing experience. One of the things all of us want is to learn about ourselves and to grow as human beings. Whatever someone's experience has been trying out the cruising lifestyle for a while, whether positive or negative, everyone will agree that in some way it has grown them as a person and positively changed the way they perceive life. Above all, the cruising community doesn't care whether you're a lawyer or if you spend your life behind a garbage truck. If you own a boat, you are equal. Even though all of this is true, trying to sell anyone on a cruising lifestyle purely on the previous mentioned life-changing events would be a lie. So let's talk about a few things cruising isn't. No matter what people tell you, cruising is a slow and expensive way of travel. Do you want to travel cheap? Go backpacking or camping. Do you want to travel fast and comfortable? Take a train or a car or an airplane. They are faster and less expensive. Do you want to spend your time on white sandy beaches? It's cheaper to fly to the Bahamas or charter a boat in the Bahamas than to get a boat ready and go there. Besides all this, cruising is not a vacation. Half of the time it's a job of dealing with immigration, fixing the boat, or dealing with unexpected weather or rolling anchorages. As he says in the book, the undeniable truth is that going cruising makes no logical sense whatsoever. Pretending that it does won't help you convince your wife to go with you. So why on earth would she give up her comfortable life for this dream of yours? For this we need to talk about a few other things first. Why was his first sailing trip an absolute disaster? Let's say that your wife has a dream. Her dream is to start a hair salon together with you. She's going to learn how to cut hair, which is a long-term dream of hers. You don't know much about cutting hair, but you can help her in managing the store. Someone has to manage the payments of the clients and to clean up the hair that fell on the floor that she cut. Above all that, she would like to do it in the African slums. You probably dislike everything about that idea. So why then would she follow you in your dream of living on a much smaller boat than your house with limited amenities away from her friends and family? This is exactly why his first trip was a disaster. She never bought into the dream. He had given her an ultimatum: I go with or without you. And because of that, everything that would go wrong from the start of the trip was a reason for her to say, you see, I knew it, this was a bad idea, it's all your fault. The first thing that happened when they left on their trip was that they got into a storm. In the book he says that it was probably really bad luck. In my personal experience, everybody who starts doing this lifestyle has one of the worst sails ever in the very beginning. Why? Because in the beginning we don't understand the reality of weather forecasts yet, and the sea is unforgiving. It is just part of the beginning. We first have to make a few mistakes before we really understand how to pick out those better weather forecasts to have nice sailing trips. His dream was to sail around the world, and after this first week that was certainly not going to happen anymore. He convinced her to keep sailing around Mexico for a few months. That's what they did. I quote from the book, if you're able to get her out there without getting her on board with the dream, it won't be for very long. Even though they had a whole bunch of amazing experiences on this trip that they afterwards both agreed on that changed their lives forever, the biggest reason why the whole trip was a failure was because the whole time he was in the convincing business. He had convinced her to buy a boat, he had convinced her to go sailing, and now he was convincing her every time to take the next step on the journey. And if your life is a continuous effort of overcoming someone else's resistance, it is going to get tiresome and tedious. And it's going to destroy the dream for you too. So how do you make her want to do this trip out of herself? Let's first look at the difference between men and women. I quote from the book, when it comes to the idea of sailing away from normal life on a little boat, the differences between men and women are vast. Where most men, after a time at sea, get a little sloppier with their personal hygiene, many grow a beard and wash themselves less often as they would in normal life. On the contrary, one of the reasons we men like women so much is because they do an effort, generally more than us, to look nice. They like to wash themselves with fresh water instead of salt water, and more often than most men feel the need to, when living on a boat, to change the clothes they wear. It is good to understand that these needs are more primal for women than for men. Some women even like to have things like a washing machine in their living area for them or for you to wash their clothes. These little differences in what keeps us being happy together living this lifestyle is going to determine what kind of boat we need. We need to understand that it's a big thing we are asking from her to potentially try out this dream of yours for a while. The other big thing is where most men are more comfortable with the idea of starting out on an adventure while leaving everything behind and just see what comes our way. Most women would like to have a plan. How long is it going to take? What is it going to cost? Where are we going? When will we be back? And that brings us to the next chapter. What is this fantasy of yours? What do you really want to get out of it, and what's in it for her? Is your plan to sail around the world, or to do a season or a few seasons cruising and then after that make a new decision about how to continue life? To someone who is hesitant about starting this dream, that second plan of starting out with one season or a few seasons is a whole lot easier to sell. Besides this, there's a big difference between sailing around the world versus sailing the Baja in Mexico and the Bahamas. Sailing around the world means days on end of sailing before reaching a new destination, while the Bahamas or the Baja means a couple of hours of sailing before reaching a new destination. There's even a big difference between sailing the Bahamas versus sailing the Caribbean. Sailing from the USA to the East Caribbean means you first have to do a challenging route against the wind to get to the East Caribbean, while sailing the Bahamas means much more easy sailing because you mostly sail inside the protection of the Bahama banks and sails are much shorter. So for someone who is hesitant about doing longer sailing trips, A season or a few seasons in the Baja or the Bahamas to start off with is a lot easier to sell. And what do you think you get out of it? Beaches, freedom, solitude, mastery, romance of the sea, sail around the world just so you can say you did it? For me personally, one of the things I wanted to get out of it was learning how this world works, so that if this is something I want to do later in life, that I already have the skill set to do it and don't have to learn everything from scratch. What do you want to get out of it? And what's in it for her? As human beings, we all want to grow in life and we want to feel that we are in command of our own life. Let's start with being in command of our own life. As this is not her dream but yours, what will she be on this trip? Will she be the captain of the boat, making all the decisions, and you follow her along as a passenger? Probably not, right? Because it's your dream. But just as you wouldn't like to follow her into her dream, not being in command of your own life, she doesn't want to follow you in your dream while not being in command of her life. If she is not the captain of the boat, but you are, then what is her role? In order to share the dream, she has to have an active role in basically everything. To start with, in researching about where to go, what the reality of a sailing trip like this is, and an active decision role in what boat you're going to buy together. The majority of couples on a boat tend to go into a more traditional role where he does most of the captain jobs, including fixing the engine and electronics, and she occupies herself more with cooking, cleaning, etc. Two tips he gives is that, one, if you are the one who knows most about sailing, teaching her to sail might not be a great idea. A husband and wife where one of the two teaches the other can make the other feel offended quickly. It might be money spent wise to have her take some sailing classes with a teacher. And two, there should always be a second option off the boat so that no one feels trapped. It doesn't have to be a dinghy with an engine, it can be an inflatable kayak too. In order to make this dream work together, there has to be a balance. You might not have the same skill set, but you probably both have a skill set that complements each other. She might, for an example, be very organized and would like to do some administrative parts of the journey, and she might be very clean and you are not. And you might be better with fixing engines. To have two captains on one boat is a problem. It's totally fine if there's one captain, but there has to be a balance so that both people feel like they're in control of their lives. He suggests that in the case that you are the one who knows about sailing and she doesn't, that even though during the actual sailing you might make most of the tactical decisions, the decision about when you go and where you will be made together. The more she's able to participate in running the boat, the bigger her emotional involvement will be. What type of boat will make your wife or girlfriend happy and why? As he says, in the end it all comes down to money. In the eyes of a woman, a catamaran will always win for a variety of reasons. The biggest reasons being they don't heel over much while being on their way, and that heeling is what makes a lot of people anxious. A catamaran also is a lot more stable while being on anchor and doesn't roll much like a monohull can. They are also easier to handle as sail trimming or fixing something on the way just becomes easier when the boat is not heeled over so much. But most of all, a catamaran resembles a normal house most, where the living area is bright and open. Unlike in monohulls where most of us are forced to live below deck. Lastly, they hold their value really well. They tend to get sold for a similar price as where you bought them for, where we tend to lose quite a bit of money on monohulls. Of course, you gotta have the money to afford them. What follows now are a bunch of general suggestions. He suggests, and I agree, not to go much above 42 feet. When you go over 42 foot, the boat often becomes too big for your wife to handle herself. And if she can't handle the boat by herself, she'll feel powerless when on her way and she'll enjoy the trip less. Also, the boat becomes too big to squeeze into anchorages and you have to go further away behind all the other boats every time. Besides this, you're going to need more electronics like electric winches, and more electronics means more maintenance and it will be more expensive. Stay away from wood. Wood looks nice on a boat, but it is a lot of work. And you already have a couple hundred tasks to do on the boat, the woodwork will often go to the wife. And she may not mind doing it the first time, but the next time she would have rather done something else. Have a water maker or big water tanks. As we talked about before, women care a bit more about being clean and dressing up, and lots of fresh water makes a difference between camping on the ocean and living on the ocean. Go for comfort instead of speed. Don't buy a race boat. All boats are slow and it's really about the journey and not about getting as soon as possible to the destination. She likes less motion and staying warm and dry in colder climates or cool and dry in warmer climates. A comfortable berth. The berth of the boat is where she'll spend a lot of her time. It needs to have a mattress that is comfortable and dry. A berth is not just a bedroom, it's a space where all of her personal belongings are and where she'll go to have some alone time to be away from you. A cockpit that is protected from the elements. Generally a little more than us, she likes to be dry when it rains. Don't get owned. Don't spend all your money on a boat because then you'll only be worrying about little scratches and what else could go wrong. And you really want to spend your time exploring places and go hiking. Don't buy a boat that needs too much work or you might never leave. Make sure that the boat is big enough for whatever crafts she likes to do. How do you get her to follow you in your dream? The author says that before he left, he had made up a certain story in his mind why he wanted to leave on a trip like this. But later he found out that actually the real reason was different. He hated his job, getting up very early in the morning, wearing a suit and tie every day, having superficial chit-chat with people at work. He spent quality time with his wife, but it was always short because both of them had busy working lives. He rarely saw his friends because he was so busy with his job. Owning his house and his cars and a whole bunch of other stuff didn't make him feel free at all. Instead, it made him feel trapped and lonely. Most of us work all of our lives towards retirement to eventually have all that free time and do all those things we want to do. One of the biggest life experiences that cruising gives us is the following. At this moment, you might be able to only dream of all those white sandy beaches that you'll see, all the cocktails you're going to have on the beach and all those beach walks you're going to take and all the sunrises and sunsets you're going to see. In reality, after 20 or 30 white sand beaches, also they are becoming a little boring. And once you've really felt that experience, it will change your life forever. Because you realize on a younger age than retirement that all those beautiful experiences you now long for also get boring at a certain moment. And that the idea of retirement maybe isn't so great at all. It is very likely that you're going to find out that you much more prefer keep occupying yourself with something you like doing. And experiencing this on a younger age will very likely, even if you don't stay in the cruising lifestyle, have you organize your then previous life differently. Because you've already had the retirement experience now. This is one of the major experiences you can get out of the cruising lifestyle that can change your future positively in every way if you ask me. Another motivation he had was that deep inside, he wanted to have a deeper relationship with his wife Megan, something that was hard to achieve in the little time they had for each other living on land. And he hoped that cruising would change that. The biggest reason to do this lifestyle is time. Let me explain. In the book he talks about time as the true currency of life. When you're young, time flies by, but when it's getting later in your 30s, you start noticing the importance of time. You see people around you get sick or die at a much younger age than they should. We all hope that we will be fit until an old age, but we do see examples around us that it doesn't happen for everyone. Time cannot be bought with money, and also we can never get time back. The moment right now will never come back. He and his wife both realized that they were working very hard for houses, cars, furniture, and lifestyle they had to have because everybody else had it. His life was good with dinners at restaurants, watching movies and having a vacation once or twice a year. But they both realized that to have that lifestyle, they spent 80 to 90% of their waking hours working. Cruising is a way to change that live-work ratio and to get more out of life than you ever thought possible. They both agreed that they wanted to increase their live-work ratio. And the only way to do that was to either win the lottery or learn to live with less. If you would make a list of your memories of the last year or the last couple of years, how many worthwhile memories have you made? This is something cruising differs from land life. After a couple months of cruising, seeing dolphins swim around the boat, experiencing new cultures, and seeing dozens of white sand beaches, you have memories to talk about for years. As he says in the book, his cruising memories, like the people they met and cultures they experienced, are the richest, deepest, and densest of their entire lives. When they look back at the memories they've had on their sailing adventures, they compare nothing to the day-to-day fancy meals or vacations or their jobs, houses, or cars could ever have. Even the memories of the bad days, like when the boat was dragging or it was bad weather, or times where they almost lost the boat, the retelling of those stories has given them so much in their lives, which is a confirmation that their cruising time was more valuable than any other times in their lives. We all aim for personal growth in our lives, and the other big thing cruising gives us is a lot of free time. Which brings us to the question, what are your life goals, especially the ones of your wife? And would more time in her life help her achieve those goals? Also, if she enjoys any type of creative activity like writing or photography or another creative activity that takes a lot of time, cruising is perfect for that. I quote from the book, "Together we form the basis for what we value most in life, and that was time." She shouldn't choose to go cruising because it's the least of bad alternatives, but rather because she wants to go. She's looking forward to it and she knows it will bring you both so many positive and lasting experiences. To recapture, cruising is an active lifestyle and you'll see that your fitness will improve. Cruising, even though not vacation, is an opportunity to relax and unwind. It's a great time to develop artistic hobbies, and often it's a time of spiritual growth, while living in tune with nature, connecting with yourself and the world around you. I hope you liked the summary of this book. Give it a like if you like this video. A link to the book is in the description of this video. And let me know if you have any suggestions for future topics.